Hi, everyone. So my name is Tamar, and I've been working with Paulo for many, many years, starting at Stanford. And I've been really enjoying the way we impact the world. So we have already 23 countries in this FabLearn, but this is actually the first international panel that we have in FabLearn. So you're the first panelist internationally, which is very good, yes. So we have 6 countries, and I will let them introduce themselves and talk about what they do. And then you can ask questions, and we will try to do the idea with going to the question, but we maybe also can use this. So I noticed nobody used it before in this conference. I don't know why, because it's very comfortable to see some questions. So if you want, you can use it on your laptop or tablet or smartphone, and we can see the question and ask them question. So yes, I'm going to sit and let the first presenter be Lorenzo.
Hi to everyone. I'm Lorenzo Guasti. I am a researcher, come from Italy. I work in a quite big institute of research named Indire. And we have some research that regard this kind of arguments. One of these is hydroponic indoor greenhousing at school, and we are collaborating with Tamar and Paulo with Columbia University and once with Stanford. And we want to apply the bifocal model to children very young, primary and primary school, and we want that they play like a young scientist, and they work in 2 different ways. From a side, they observe what happens when a plant grows, and in another side, they try to build very simple models. And working together in these 2 sides, they realize how a physical phenomenon happen. And it's a research that is ongoing, and we are working very hard in these weeks and these months, and we are trying to create a model that can be spread all around. We are creating also do-it-yourself greenhouses together. This is a 3D printer at school. It's an old research that is coming to the final stage, and we are working since 2014. And now I was very happy yesterday to meet Silvia Martinez, because we start using the Think, Make, Improve cycle at school, even with very young child. And in Italy, it's very famous, the Think, Make, Improve. If you meet an Italian teachers that work in makers and 3D printers, all of them talking about Think, Make, Improve. But now we would like to create a methodology that's a bit more extensive and more that pay more attention on the first stage and the last stage of Think and Improve. And we will present very soon. The last research where we are working is makerspace at school, especially primary school and pre-primary. And we was talking this morning in the workshop that we are working on a sustainable model, because we want that the makerspace inside the school is not just a lab, but it's a place that starts from architecture, from the furniture and everything, and change the school, that become the place where everything change and teachers change. And our sustainable model is something where makers and teachers works together, because teachers alone they had a very hard job, and that they can't manage also the makerspace, and so the help of the makers is very useful. And so we are trying to study a model and try to give the model to the schools, so they have some documents to start makerspace if they want. I stop because we have a very short time, everyone, so I give you later the opportunity of make questions. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janet Fofang. I'm from Cameroon. And I started a K-12 school in Cameroon where we are highly STEM focused. So I will be talking about making in unplugged communities. So in Africa, kids make their own toys. Like the whole idea of making here, and to me, I don't know how to. Oh, sorry, I'm messing up everything. I don't know how to I explain the context of making here, because in my community, typically, we grow up making our own toys. So all over the community, you would find kids with different ideas. They come up with their own toys. I was trying to like play the video. I'm sure.
It's just underneath that.
Right.
Did you open it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was trying to play a video of how so in my school we would oh, how do I go back now? Okay, yeah. So in my school, we are looking at how we can leverage on this whole making background that our young children have to be able to plug them. So spoiler alert, everyone makes their own things, but it's so like rudimentary. They just do everything like from scratch. If you need something, you can quickly make it to just solve the problem immediately. So by design, we are makers. We always fix things. Like our tools are always like rudimentary. We imagine things and just create them. If you need something, you fix something that would solve the problem for that moment. But then here comes a new era. Most people have digital tools. Most people have phones. Most people are now trying to use computers and other digital devices. So we are thinking, like, how can we leverage on the power of these tools to be able to plug the tinkering ideas that our kids have, to be able to observe what would happen with the making that they have at this level, and plus computational thinking, plus some AI, what would be the outcome of it? So I'm sure some of the video that just passed gives an idea of how these kids would actually think in these circumstances. So we are looking at a situation where children are actually really young and can actually think through processes and make things themselves. So here is a makerspace in the Tassah Academy. Like I said, I just started. We have like 800 kids, and we're all like working towards technology embedded in normal educational system. Thank you.
No, it's you.
Yeah, we just switch it up. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Akshay, and I'm representing a body of work that's been done by my parent university, which is called Amrita University, which is based in south of India. But we work across 142 villages in India, and we also have 5 campuses. So it's a lot of work that goes on in all of that. So this is what our maker workshops look like. We work with children in rural schools and in tribal schools, where we train them on different types of skills, looking at design, looking at tinkering. We use PVC pipes, straws, thermocol, paper, and we also have our own hack of the little bits, which is created by an alumni from our campus, which we use. It's called electron blocks. It's used to teach electronics. So the government has been putting a lot of emphasis on building makerspaces in India in the last 3 years. We have currently over 5,400 makers, 441 makerspaces in India, and our university has been instrumental in setting up 400 of those. And we also trained the first mentors who were hired by the government to run these programs. We've trained over the 240 mentors to start this program off. We call our program the Second Foundation, inspired by Isaac Asimov, and you know I'm a sci-fi fan, so. And then, so essentially, it's looking at a culmination of different kinds of workshops. We teach computational thinking, in which we use Scratch, and we also use tangible medium of teaching, where you physically present yourself in the medium. Maker skills, I talk a little bit more about that in this presentation. Robotics, and some of the most powerful tools that we use is our workshop on community problem solving, where we take up issues in the community and we get students to come up with ideas to see how to solve that. And life skills, where we talk about personal problems that they face in life, which nobody really talks to them about, like child sexual abuse or domestic violence or alcoholism. And then we try to see how we can bring that into the conversation as well. And something that we've recently started up, this was started up as a UNESCO initiative within our campus, was we're also looking at vulnerability mapping, where we're teaching children how to go out, conduct interviews, and come back with data, and then try to see what kind of vulnerabilities exist along several verticals like healthcare, sanitation, so on and so forth, and try to see what kind of change can they bring about in their community to make that happen. So our maker workshops typically focuses on teaching about design and tinkering. So we talk about design affordances. We teach them what it means to think about affordances, because this was inspired primarily because the first rural villages we went and worked with, they had absolutely no electricity, no access to computers, absolutely nothing. So when we did take some kits and we took some laptops and taught them when we were leaving, they were like, what are you leaving behind for us? We're not leaving us with anything. So we were inspired to kind of teach them something that they could hold on to themselves. And this is the principles of design. We taught them how do you observe and think about design that exists around you, because you just need 2 pairs of eyes to do that. And that's kind of where it started off. And we teach them how to look at design, how to appreciate design, and that's kind of the foundational first step towards becoming a good maker. We also teach them modeling. One of the interesting approaches that we took by experimentation was we started, typically modeling is taught with teaching how to create parts and then moving on to assemblies. We realize it's too boring for children if you start with parts and moving to assemblies, so we do it backwards. We first give them assemblies, when I get them to put them together, and when they're really excited about it, we move further down and we teach them how to make parts. So we kind of give them like a bicycle without the wheels. And then when they assemble the bicycle, we say, oops, there's no wheels, so now do you want to learn how to make parts? And we kind of teach them backwards how to make parts. Some of the products that our students create as part of the user-centered activities that we do is they go out, conduct interviews with people, find out what their needs are. And this is an activity done at a school where children came up with a football stand. I love the one in top center, which is a group of girls came up with a beautiful cradle shelf for the kindergarten, because it kind of reminds small children of the cradle. It was a very beautiful design, and a whole bunch of other stuff. A very special project that we have is, and what we're very close to our heart, is what we call the Grand Maker Theatre Challenge. This is where we bring a culmination of computational thinking, life skills, and maker skills together, where we teach children to come up with a script based on the problems that they face in their lives. We teach them to script it, we teach them how to record the audio, they learn Scratch animation, and they learn how to create a background animation which is projected on a screen. They have to create their own theater as well, and the puppets. And they do a theater show at the end of the day, end of 2 days actually, where they have the background animation and they have the stick puppets to tell their story. Another initiative is where we also work with teaching them how to work with junk. This one was inspired actually by one of my visits to Chiang Mai in Thailand, where I saw a man had a boat made out of plastic bottles. It was very interesting. And I brought it back and I kind of started working with children, also teaching them how to make things out of junk. And this was very empowering, because for something like this is low cost, it is low resource requirements, but at the same time, it really opens up the avenues of what they can accomplish with the very little that they have. I'm done. I'm on my last slide. Sorry. There are a lot of lessons we've learned along the way. There are a few questions that I have, which is open to you as well, which is the first and foremost thing that we always find which is challenging is looking at aesthetics versus function. because you see children who are more focused on the engineering aspects, who are so focused on getting the functionality right, they're tossing aesthetics out the window, but then there are kids who focus so much on the aesthetics and they never get done with their project. So how do you bring that balance, and how do you measure skills, and how do you measure what it means to be a maker when you want to look at both these elements working together? That's one thing. Another thing is, I don't know if you noticed, but we used to use PVC pipes. So our parent organization also works in teaching vocational skills. So what we did do in schools was we would teach them making artifacts using PVC pipes. So although they don't learn any vocational skill, we don't mention the word plumbing, they learn all the basics of plumbing by the end of the workshop. So now they know how to fix pipes, they know how to select pipes, so on and so forth. Tinkering and failure helps better charge chunking. I don't have to tell you about that, you already know that. And leading from something that I also found with a lot of people talked about it yesterday as well, was I leave you with a quote where children mentioned that it helped them relax. A lot of these children come from very difficult backgrounds, so we have found that working with maker skills, maker workshops really helps them encourage, share their ideas, open up, and it helps them to relax a lot. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Maya Halevy. I'm from the Bloomfield Science Museum in Jerusalem. And we were introduced with the maker movement in one of the conference, ASTC, the Association of Science and Technology Centers, that's based in the US, like 8 years ago. And I came back, and it seems to us like very interesting approach for Science Museum. It was just started in few of the Science Museum at the Exploratorium with the Tinkering Studio and with others. And when we came back, we decided to start with a maker fair to see who are the makers in Israel and how we can allocate them. On those times, I think we have like very two small maker space in Israel, and they were not very much connected. So first of all, our mission was to know more the community of makers in Israel so we can see who are the players. So I think for the first and the second maker fair that we did, this was mainly the focus that we had, was just to see the community. So we know that we have other to work. We didn't know that we are makers, but we are, as a museum that build and develop and design all our exhibits, are a maker space by itself. And then later on, we invited the Tinkering Studio to come and do something with us, and we learned, and we really invited other organizations to join us. So we started to see that there is a need and interest in Israel also to develop more a community of education around makers. So that was the second stage for our work. And then we moved into activity, and we target first the families, as we believe very much in what we call science capital. I don't know if this term is very familiar with you, but science capital was really a definition of the King's College in London of what you know, what you do, how you think, and whom you know, as four kind of pillars that really can really predict how much interest you have in science. And we thought that in making it's very relevant to use those four pillars of science capital also into the maker. So what we did is we started to look for other organizations in Israel and to establish a kind of community of practice in Israel. We do not really have researchers that are focused on what I heard here. It's mainly practitioners, some of them on a level of a school, some of them on the level of a network of schools, and many of them are kind of NGOs, and Science Museum in Israel are very, very much in it. So we are three organizations that started to develop this idea of bringing FabLearn to Israel and see if we can build something around FabLearn as a community, and how can we use FabLearn as an event that will really help to build our community. So you see here the logos of the whole organization that were participating in our FabLearn last year. And we are now doing more than just a conference day. We are really doing a whole series of events. But just to mention what kind of organization we have here. So the three organizations that are really the backbone organization are our museum. It's Mindset, which is an incubator for EdTech. and Mifras, who is really a group of an NGO or an organization that support innovation in schools. So with these three, and with the support of the Ministry of Education and the foundation, Bracha Foundation, we really have science museum, we have NGOs, we have networks of schools, we have some maker space, and we also have the Hebrew University and Bezalel Academy of Design of Art, because we thought we need also to involve academic institution in our work. And this is what we did this year, 2018. So FabLearn conference was one day that was in the focal point, but around it we had 2 hackathons. We have our maker fair that we really transformed into much more educational maker fair. We have a maker festival, a young maker, a teachers and workshops, masterclass of makers, make happening, speed dating with makers, academic conferences. So it really became a whole group of organizations that joined together to bring make into education. But what was very important in our facility, in our thinking behind, was how we can connect the formal and the informal. And when I'm looking on this FabLearn conference, what really is missing from my point of view as a science museum director and as a person that is really very much embedded in our community of science museums is science museum people. Because I think that we don't speak anymore about formal and informal. We are speaking only about this ecosystem that we are developing around. And I think this kind of player might be very relevant to the discussion that we are doing here. And this is what we feel as a science museum in Jerusalem. And this is what we do in order to change the way schools and families and after-school program are looking into make. So we are working top-down, and we need to do it because Israel is very centralized by its educational system. So we're advocating with the national and local levels administration. We're creating local ecosystem, even in Jerusalem. We have now an ecosystem of 7 organizations, all developed and operate maker activities. We co-design learning materials with teachers that are very much in it. We're offering PD for teachers and educators. In Jerusalem, we just offer a course for non-science teachers on make with all other organizations in our ecosystem. So teachers will be aware what are the opportunities they have. And we're operating open labs for teachers, students, and families in our museum. So this is just to summarize our approach to what we do in this context. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nalin, or my nickname is Tutiyaphuengprasert. And if you know me longer, you can call me TT. The longer you know me, the shorter my name is. All right. I am working at a school, a constructionist school in Thailand called the Runsikalai School for Innovative Learning. And I'm also a part of Siksa Patana Foundation, who has been working with Professor Simo Papert back ways in 1997. So that was the time when we started to think about to change our country by using learning, by develop learning capacity of our people, by using constructionism to change our education. So we have been working with MIT for a while in the beginning years, and then in the past 5 years, we developed a project with Stanford, with Paulo Blickstein and King Mongkut University in Thailand, and the foundation together developed the educators in Thailand and the first Fab Lab in Thailand in school. And then we are moving on to the next 5 years kind of collaboration with Columbia University. So that's the background. So I have been involved with like 20 years of work, and 5 minutes is very difficult for me to, all right. So I try to go through some of the work. Okay, first one about constructionism in Thailand. I think like constructionism had been touched like more than 1,000 lives of people since 1997. So this is a good timing for us to actually study what happened in the past 20 years. And we apply constructionism both in school with the students and also for the informal education outside of the school. That means the adult learners who are for example, we started a project with the farmers with the bad debt, and we try to use learning to help them improve their life quality. And we also work with the human resource development, training our workforce in the industry by using constructionism learning experience. And we started to do our preliminary study with Paulo and Dr. Deborah Fields, and we presented last year in constructionism. This is the QR code to that paper, if you are interested. And we will continue study our practice with the school, village, community development, and also in the industry. So we have a network of people both in education and also in the banking industries and also the farmer. Now we are trying to strengthen the network, and this is my boss. I would like to show you. This is a very important leader in Thailand. His name is Paron Istrasena, and he is 92 years old, still working actively. And we are now trying to set up a new team of leadership to continue his work and wonderful projects to the future. So I'm a part of this committee. Next, about maker education in Thailand. Since 2013, we started off the first Fab Lab at school in the Runsikalai School in DSIL. So last year, I have done a lot of training to teachers, and both inside my own school and for teachers from outside, from teachers who had the Fab Lab in school, but they have no idea what it is. The question is they ask me what's the difference between biology lab and Fab Lab? So that's the level of knowledge about Fab Lab in Thailand. So there are a lot of work back home to do. And I have my wonderful group of students helping me explaining what is Fab Lab and what is maker education in classroom. So I had written an article about my experience on professional development with schools in the city and also in the rural area. And this is I'm not sure this is a QR code. Oh no, this is a QR code for our Fab Lab in Thailand, if you are interested. And this is the book that we published last year. It's in Thailand. We call Fab Lab Teacher 101. We are trying to create the tools that help spreading the practice. So this book included the class activities, suggestion material, assessment rubric, and some basic idea about digital fabrication in school. So that's the work. And the last piece is about scaling up this constructionism projects and move it into the future. And we are thinking about developing a social enterprise, so this project can be self-sustained in the long term, financially. So we try to make the product and service out of the knowledge that we had in the past 20 years and, spread it out to people. And, sometimes I sell the workshops and camps to kids and adults. And then we are trying to manage the funding, the money's in from people who can afford the workshops and then goes to people who have much less opportunity. So that's the basic idea. So we had been working with almost 800 people in the past 2 years, people who involved with the workshops. So that's where we are at the moment. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Diana Ibarra, and I am here from Hong Kong. and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Independent Schools Foundation Academy. We are a private school, and we are an independent school, which means under the Hong Kong educational requirements, we're not an international school and we're not a local school. So we have quite a bit of flexibility as to the curriculum that we offer, our admissions of students, and it provides us a certain amount of leeway as to what it is we're allowed to do. I'm showing you this picture just to give you an idea of the context of the school where I work. We're nestled in a valley and surrounded by trees. But one of the challenges that we've had, that all of Hong Kong has, is that we're so short on space. People live in small little houses or small flats, and you'll see that we're challenged as a community to find space, both in our timetable as well as physical space, in order to put our maker spaces in. Does that work? Yeah. So we're an international baccalaureate school. We're a part of the IBO, which is a curriculum and an organization out of Switzerland. We teach children from about 3.5 years old till grade 12. And it was this school was founded in 2003 with by a woman who is an engineer, and also one of our founders was Charles Cao, who won the a Hong Kong individual who won the Nobel Prize for fiber optics. So within the ethos and the mission of the school, there's a strong sense of experiential learning, looking at things from a technology point of view, as well as allowing for, top academics. We're also a bilingual school. And it's a unique school by Hong Kong standards in that in the primary school, 70% of our primary school children take their education in Chinese, so it includes all subjects. But then when they get to the secondary school in grade 6, we flip that and they go into English, because at the end of the IBO, when they take their diploma and exams, of course, the majority of those are in English. So our students come out fully bilingual. And one of the challenges that I've had in putting in these maker spaces is making sure that everything that we do within the 2 maker spaces is also bilingual, so that our bilingual faculty have access to the same materials and the same opportunities for teaching these skills that you would see in the English setting. And my Chinese isn't very good, so I'm somewhat challenged by it. I'm a part of the Shuyuan Academy. I'm the director of the Shuyuan Academy, and that's the school within the school and the school outside of the school. So I get the opportunity to go off and figure out the next cool project, the next fun thing that we're going to do. How are we going to do that? What's that going to look like? And then begin to implement that into the school. So I don't have I'm not a teacher by training, and I don't have a large teaching load, which gives me the flexibility to go off and kind of experience new ideas, take risks, and kind of figure some of it out. So I've got a great job and kind of a fun job. So we've started Maker Education. We've been working with the FabLearn team for about 18 months. And we're pretty aggressive in what it is we're trying to do. We're trying to integrate this into the curriculum throughout the different schools, as well as throughout the different subjects. So we're looking at it in Chinese history, we're looking at it in geography, we've got it in our math for engineering course. It's across the spectrum. In the daily curriculum that the students are a part of. We also put it into some co-curricular activities, some after-school things that I'm going to show you one of those here in a minute. We provide faculty professional development. We call it the Tinkerer program. And when we started this and we advertised this as a possibility, we're into our first year of it, we thought out of a faculty of about 250 faculty, we might get 20 people interested. And we did the opening session of it, and to introduce it, we had over 80 people, 80 faculty that were interested. And so what we thought was going to be a small pilot year with the Tinker program is double what we thought it was going to be. And we're we are preparing now to launch the second round of that. We do a lot of service learning and a lot of experiential learning as a part of the school, and we're taking the maker education also into some of our service projects. One of the areas, my background is engineering and science, and one of the areas that I've been able to lead out on for the school is looking at student-led research, and I'm going to show you an example. We take students to international conferences here in the United States. One of them is the American Geophysical Union. It's an annual conference where students do a student-led research project. The majority of them are around sustainability and environmental sciences. It's a geophysical conference. It's, earth sciences. But we also have one around molecular biology, and we put a molecular biology lab in. We're doing a little bit of educational research, and we're looking at our computer science pathways program. But the one that I want to show you is this is an example of a young man named Jonathan who took a poster to AGU this past fall. And he had to write an abstract, get it in on time, and then run an experiment using something, and he used an underwater robotic that he had built. And what we did was we had this robot, and he put it into the Victoria Harbor, which is the harbor between Kowloon and Hong Kong Island, and he picked up mud samples, sediment samples from the bottom of it, and then we took those off to an analytical lab, and he tested them for lead, cadmium, and mercury. And this underwater robotics program is a big program in Hong Kong, and actually around the world, where there's a big competition. And we had ran this program for several years, and our students were losing interest in it because they didn't like the artificial competition that would take place in a swimming pool in Hong Kong. It just wasn't working. So we stepped back from that, and we said, okay, the underwater robotic is built with, it's a simple machine to build. It's built with PVC pipe, little blinge motors, and some switches, and some, electrical wire. So it's easy. But it's not easy, and that was the challenge that we had. So what we decided to do is we stepped back from this. We said, we want the underwater robotics, but we want to do something that's authentic with it, with our students. And this is where we came up with the research project. Let's use it for science. Let's do something with it. So I don't know if you probably can't see the results that well, but the take-home message on this poster is that the lead numbers in Victoria Harbor are 10,000 times higher than what the EU EPA organization would recommend. So this is staggering, fascinating information that a student has discovered. But now we get to ask the other interesting questions. How did the lead get there? Why is it there? What are we going to do about that? So this became the maker element of this. The robot became the jumping point to a lot of other really interesting things that our students can go forward and work on. We can throw this robot. I mean, Hong Kong is is islands, where lots of little islands, and there's a lot of islands and a lot of ocean that we can throw this into. So this can become part of a bigger database that we want to that we can add to. So again, student-led research project and an opportunity to rejig what was an ongoing activity to make it more meaningful. And I guess part of my story would be to remember that you can always we get to change. We get to rejig things to make sure that we do make it meaningful on behalf of the students and in this case, even the Hong Kong community. And that's our seal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and I'm very happy that you could squeeze everything for 5 minutes. I know it was a very hard decision what to cut because you have so much to talk about. So we're going to look at the question in a minute, but before I'm going to go and open the slide for that. But before that, I have one question that I want to ask all of you. So I'm thinking that each one of you is a leader in this country. That's why we selected those people, because we thought they're leading something in their countries. We already know that when a teacher, a good teacher, is deciding to have a makerspace in the school, it's going to happen. You have one dedicated person, specific class, and it works. But how do you scale up? And this is a thing that we're still kind of trying to figure out. How do you scale up this? How do you make this in different schools? And how do you make a few teachers working with it? And you're talking, some of you talked about numbers, 800. I remember I was like thinking about all the numbers that you put there. So you are scaling up and you're leading and you're thinking about how to impact others. So that's my question. And when you start working on talking about it, I'll look at the question that the audience was thinking about. So you can start.
Okay, I always start. Okay.
You always start, yeah.
Thank you to define a leader. Well, and I keep a team of research, of course. And in Italy, we are trying to scale up, studying a model, a sustainable model, and writing on about the model, and try to share this way of acting at school. There is a new book now, for example, that talk about the situation in Italy, and we hope that new leader of new schools and teachers and directors and makers too find a way to build new makerspace inside the school. In this moment in Italy, school had quite a good amount of money using European Commission funds and so on. So they find the way to build new laboratory and such kind of makerspaces. But now they need help, especially from researchers, for example, to find a way to manage the laboratory and the makerspace in the right way, and avoid the typical situation that you build a lab and then in 1 or 2 years everything become old and no one work there. So if you find a good model, probably you have a best future. This is the way how we think to scale up in Italy.
In my situation, it's a little kind of, I don't know. I was teaching electronics for like 17 years before, and it was difficult for me to, that was in a public school, and it was hard for me to actually get the ideas of making into that kind of curriculum. So that's how I transitioned to doing other things by the side that ended up, like we started with 1 classroom, 2 classrooms, and then ended up becoming a full-blown school like 10 years after, like we started in 2009. So with that ideology, those who really liked what we were doing started coming in, and then we became a model that the government now actually uses to just for showcasing, which is something that I really still do not appreciate because it doesn't get into policy. And I think that's where communities like this ones are really good, because we now plug into a bigger community, and then we start talking to other people who do these kind of things, and then it becomes something that is more like we want to like explain the bigger picture of it, because the kind of like top-down approach of education, like she said, is really very strong in Africa. Like the government like decides everything about education. So unless we have a private space where we can negotiate things, school would only be like school, and everything that kids do out of school, like making and thinking, doesn't feature anywhere in the classroom. Like all of those things they would build doesn't even, like it doesn't, like nobody mentions a single line of what you build out of school in your classroom, because it's textbooks, it's what comes from some other culture and the language itself. So I think I want to understand how it's so complicated. Like we speak several languages, and then people make different tools, and the variations of those tools vary. So scaling up is something, it's interesting. Like the research of this in these kind of communities will be interesting because it's going to be really varied. So that's why I think such places will be good to plug in, so we can have a bigger picture of how people make in different areas?
Scaling up is never a simple challenge to solve. And for a country as vast as India and with the diversity that we have, this is a challenge that I've traveled across the world trying to find solutions to. One solution I found in Israel, where for although a small country but powerfully driven to reform its education system, I see that all the school systems are linked with a university, if I'm right. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And I would see that as one model that works, that seems to work. But for a country where, like for India, has diversity in its population, we have rich cities, we have extremely poor rural communities. I think the first and foremost thing to do is to broaden the definition of what it means to have a makerspace. It has to be very inclusive. You have to look at it very differently when you go across geographies. That's primarily one thing. The ecosystem has to be there. Luckily for us, our current government is being very supportive. And the change has to be driven from the grassroots. It has to be driven by the community. It's very difficult for you to walk in there and want to bring a change. It doesn't work that easy. For us, it's been easy because our parent NGO has been working for over 40 years across India. And we've had over 140 villages that we have adopted and we're working with constantly. We've done women empowerment activities and we've done vocational training. And then to work with children and want to bring in maker skills was relatively easy for us, and that's kind of why we're succeeding, but I wouldn't say we're succeeding everywhere. There's always challenges, and we keep redefining what it means to have a maker space. We keep redefining what our curriculum is. We keep redefining the way teachers teach. There's always pushback from schools because we still follow the old British system of school, which is very rigid. And the same question that's asked world over, the teachers and the principals ask you, how do we answer to the parents? Where does making really lead to some kind of benefit in in learning STEM? There are all these fundamental questions which are, I think it's a global question to answer. And we're definitely still constantly tackling it. But the ecosystem has to develop from the ground up and top down from both sides. They need to meet at some point. It's slowly happening for us. It's going to take time.
So I can just follow and say that we need to work in Israel at least from top down and from bottom up. That's for sure. So we are using few strategies in order to spread it and to have a larger impact in the way we are tackling it. So one is really to work very closely with the ministries and to see how they can support it in the way, for example, the Ministry of Science is supporting after-school program on maker for underprivileged communities. So this was one way, but it's also mean that the Ministry of Science recognized the importance of it. So it's not only the money, it's really a kind of declaration. We are working very closely with the Ministry of Education, and we are invited to come to the conference, on a large-scale conference, to do some workshops, so introduce it, so it will be like a first stage. On the other hand, we are trying very much to build the ecosystem of formal and informal relationship on a local level, and especially what we are doing in Jerusalem is we are trying to introduce the teachers with all the makerspace they are available in Jerusalem, and to open them for the schools so they can be like a support. So teacher will know that they have someone to call, somewhere to go, to get support, not to feel alone, and to build a kind of community. And the last thing I'll mention now for a kind of point that we are trying to do is to make it available not only for the science teacher, but also for other teachers. So it will not be one teacher in a school, but a group of teachers that collaborating. So if the teacher is leaving, it still live a vivid life in the school. And for sure, developing curriculum and developing mainly professional development for the teachers to be the leaders, and it's growing. And it started with only few, and we are now having many.
Okay. I think like the story in Thailand is very tragic. I returned back home with, like in years 15 after Stanford, with a big idea, and I'm very ambitious. I'm the FabLearn person, and then I go back with a plan how to scale it up, and then I get to meet with the big shots, the Ministry of Science and Technology, a lot of meeting, trying to tell them what it is. That's the most difficult part, because it's like numbers of meetings that I have to repeat the same thing. Trying to get them from the question that what's the difference between biology lab and fab lab, until they get to know about what is laser cutter, what's a powerful thing about having laser cutter and digital fabrication. And then all of a sudden in year 2018, they asked us to give them a plan of scaling up. And we kind of like trying to go slow, like from 1 to 20. That's a lot already. They try to convince us to do more. And then we try to keep it, try to negotiate number. Because I think like when you scale up and you have to deal with the culture shock, it's a lot to work on. But all of a sudden in year 18, the Ministry of Science and Technology just rolled out a policy of 150 fab labs throughout the country. So I don't know if it's a good news, but it's very scary to me. They invited me to give a talk during the launch, and I was like, they have like very little awareness of the professional development for teachers. They think about, the most obvious thing is to teach teacher how to run the machines, or hire the lab boys inside and having engineer, and then you don't have to bother with the teachers. Just let the engineers work with kids. That's the mental model that they have at the moment. So it was like, I tried to think about what happened. It's like, I have a dream world of like, systemic, plan. It's going to scale up systematically like that and beautiful. And then the real world just like, once you can convince the big shot, they just like became like a very ambitious right away. And they have money and authority to do that. And then I have to learn how to deal with their power. Now, like, in my reality, now it's just like I get to work with one university that helped being the mentor for 16 schools out of those 150. So that's the skill that I can do. So I help with the professional development to those teachers. And it's interesting for me to see if there are like any differences, performance of the teachers and the students. And yeah, we struggle, and first of all, to get people to understand what it is, and actually pay attention, like deeper, like below, I think beyond the machines. It's more about teacher interaction, pedagogy, psychology. Everything has to be changed and rethink about. So that's the tragic happiness in Thailand. It's a mix.
So really briefly, I think that we want our students to be able to tinker with some of this equipment and with these new ideas and these new methods. And in order for us to make the changes and scale up, we need to be able to do the exact same thing as educators. And it takes time. And it's a one-on-one. And you can't come to you can't do professional development where you don't get to play with the equipment, you don't get to try the new methods, you don't get to try rewriting a new piece of curriculum. And until there's an understanding of that, you're not going to successfully scale it up. You're going to end up with something that's a fad that lasts for a couple of years. The equipment starts to break. You don't have the capacity as to how to manage that. So scaling up, I think, has to be done very, very carefully. And, bless you if you have 150 schools, because I don't think it's easy. And I think, it takes our kids time to learn this stuff. It's going to take us time to learn it as well.
Okay, so I see a lot of questions, and some people are shy, so it's anonymous, which is nice. I think that's why we have this tool. I think the way we do it, we don't have a lot of time. I'm the timekeeper here usually, but now I'm up on the stage, so I'm not. I hope somebody is taking, maybe Paolo at the end, looking at the time. We have some time? Okay. Good. So maybe what we can do is maybe you feel like you want to answer one of them, and you can just answer, one of you can answer some of the questions, or one of the questions you wanted to ask, one of the questions you told me in a minute. Oh, you want to ask? Okay. If you have some specific question that you want to answer, that will be wonderful. Which one was yours?
There is a question that
Yes, open.
There is a question they ask me if we work with the Reggio Children approach. Yes, we collaborate with them. So very fast, we collaborate with them, and we have some research together. I want to answer to Tanya very quick and leave the mic to everyone. A self-promotion, we have a free TreeCAD software we develop inside Indire. It's called SugarCAD. And a Raspberry machine called Intredire. It's everything free, and it's very easy for a child to draw in 3D. So very quick, it's a self-promotion.
Okay.
Yeah, so the question that asks about the 3D CAD modeling tools, should we use Rhino or SolidWorks? It's way too complicated, I think, to get started. The easiest thing would be to use something, if you want something that's offline, you probably want to use 123D, AutoCAD's tool. Is very simple to teach, or Tinkercad if you have access to internet.
I would answer the question about being easy to slip into deficit mode of viewing your context. So the deficit mode actually relies on the eyes of the person seeing you. Most times there's some kind of it's a superior way of seeing. Like if you want to look at people thinking that they have problems simply because they're not doing things the way you're doing, then actually you're the one with the deficit mode. I think the deficit mode actually, by making and solving these problems, they're actually having agency control over the environment. What actually defines the deficit mode is the streamlined educational system, which actually most times they do not use in the making spaces. So if you observe really well in most African communities, the information that is in books is mostly European. It's not African per se, except literature. So when it comes to technology and other things, the African technology is not written in books. So they use that and negotiate their lives every day, and they are in no deficit when it comes to that. So deficit depends on how you define it, I guess. So.
Yeah, I will refer to the question about the culture. We are located in Jerusalem. We are working with 3 communities that are all based in Jerusalem, but really are very separate, with what we call regular Jews, general Jews that are not very religious. It might be religious, but not ultra-Orthodox. There is the ultra-Orthodox community of Jews, and then there is the Muslim community that lives in East Jerusalem. So as a museum, we serve all these 3 communities, and we do operate program for each of them, and we also operate programs that combine 2 of those communities. And with MAKE, it's much easier. I mean, we are running Jewish Muslim program for 20 years, and we found that with MAKE is the easiest way, because just by doing, it's much more easier for them to communicate. Now, we don't know enough about the impact and the assessment, but we just started a new European project that's called System, And this European project is going to evaluate the learning of the personal participant in non-formal learning in MAKE. And we will have data on, I think, like 10 or 12 countries in Europe, and in Israel we are doing it in the Jewish and in the Muslim community. So it might be more interesting to share with you in 2 years.
I want to talk about resistance. Like, very good questions right there. And I think it's, you know, from 20 years working in constructionist context, I'm not sure to say that it's a happy path, but it's a very, like, a rich learning experience. And talking about trying to scale up constructionism or maker movement, like a good Fab Lab in Thailand, up to 150, hopefully, it's not kind of like an easy story. And I think the biggest resistance is in the mind, ourselves. You know, when things doesn't go like in the way we want, we call it mistakes and failure. And then we complain about it, and then we feel discouraged about it. It's okay for you to spend some time with that. And after that, I think it's important to get up and think about what I can do now, like with the resources that we have, with the people that we have, what else we can do. And I think I have been continuing in that process all along in the past 20 years. It's not fun, but it's fun in the end to look back of those struggles that you have been through. Okay, thank you.
So I'll talk to the question a little bit about what are a couple of the innovations that students have developed at ISF Academy. So because we're an IB school, all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are required to take design, which means they learn a design cycle, they learn to build. We start at the very beginning with soldering and very simple skills, woodworking, things like that, in order to get them up to speed. And homes in Hong Kong don't have tools. So this is a lot of times their first introduction to some of those tools. Another part of the MYP curriculum is the students in grade 10 have to do what's called a personal project. And this is where they spend several months on something that they're passionate about. And we're starting to see some innovations come out of the skills that we've built with them, and then the opportunity to work on something through their personal project. So, for example, we had one young man who was very interested in rice, which is an important thing if you live in Asia and in Hong Kong, or in, it's a staple for us. And he decided to build a rice robot that would work on some of the small, narrow terraces that are the historical spaces where rice was grown, both in it's in the Philippines, but also in China. And he was able to patent it. So it was huge. He was able to take that, and he put in a patent for a new mechanism for this rice robot. So that's an example on the extreme level. And then we're seeing a lot of other personal projects where students are designing with e-textiles and doing other things that are a part of the personal project process. So that personal exploration, I think, is a really important opportunity that our students have. And most of them take it seriously and do something that's quite creative.
Okay. So I think, does it work? Yeah. It's working. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your ideas and thoughts about what's happening in your countries. I'm sure people would like to ask you more questions. There are more questions, and maybe during lunch people will know who you are now and will ask you. I would like to talk with you a lot more. So let's thank them and go.